Welcome to Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, brought to you by Holy Chuck Burgers. Our business is burgers.
Good morning, Katarina Witt. There's no such thing as bad boys, only boys with bad hair.
Sponsored by Maxwell's Clothiers, your bespoke tailor since 1961. And now, your host of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, Chuck Bastie. And welcome back. This is another episode of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. I'm your producer, Cam Larocque, of course, with Chuck Bastie, our host. And this episode today is sponsored by our good friends at OneCliq, your AI-powered intelligent assistant for effortless content creation. You can transfer your videos and video podcasts or MPs into short clips with engaging copy on multiple platforms in your own customized voice. Maximize and amplify your social media reach with OneCliq, where simplicity meets impact. You can try it now for free in the links listed and elevate your content game. Our listeners get 50% off their monthly plans or 2 months free for annual plans. I'm going to say that one more time. Our listeners get 50% off their monthly plans or 2 months free for annual plans. Check out the links attached at the end of the show. Whew, Chuck, you set me up there for failure, but I think I got through that pretty good.
Thanks for that. I'm glad that you did it, because if I had to do it, I'd probably be much worse than that. So well done. Welcome to the show.
Our good friends at Fanshawe College helped me with that. But yeah, welcome. I'm pretty excited for this one. Chuck, I feel like you should do the honors and tell everyone who we have today.
Well, speaking of Fanshawe College, you're actually speaking about London, Ontario, and that's where our guest is from, London, Ontario, Rob McCallum. He's a movie maker and extraordinaire storyteller, and I'm more than elated by having him on the show. Most of the people these days would have heard of Rob's work from the Mr. Dressup documentary that premiered at TIFF and won the People's Choice Award. And we're just going to have a quick little trailer so that the people who live on the moon or don't live in Canada, who don't know who Mr. Dressup is, will now get introduced to Mr. Dressup. So cue trailer.
Okay.
Oh, here you are. You're here and we're here. I've got a good bat costume here to show you.
Didn't matter what race you were, what color you were, what religion you were, what language you spoke, you watched Mr. Dressup.
Ernie Coombs, Mr. Dressup, I mean, he was just so kind and gentle.
Ernie never forgot a child within him, and that informs everything that he does with children.
When you tell people that Fred Rogers and Ernie Coombs came to Canada together, most people don't even realize that they were very close friends.
4,000 episodes, 30 years. There are not that many shows that last that long.
Tell us what the secret is to 30 years on the air.
I'm a child at heart. It's all doing things that I always liked to do when I was a kid.
The tickle trunk was this magical, like Pandora's box.
As soon as you open that lid, something was going to happen, something magical.
I'm Tugboat Captain Dressup.
Is he going to be a wizard? Oh no, he's a dinosaur. The endless possibility of that.
Oh my, what a lovely day.
Judith was able to make Casey come completely alive.
I didn't know if Casey was a boy or a girl.
Way ahead of its time, not a little bit, way ahead of its time. Looking back on it now, I wonder, how on earth did I manage to do it for so long? And then how on earth have I managed to survive so long after I finished?
Having been Mr. Dressup for 20 years has probably made me a better person.
You assume that he comes home and kicks off his Mr. Dressup shoes and becomes a different person when he's at home, and that just simply didn't happen.
The kids tease me a lot because I laugh at his jokes.
That's why I married you, because you're such a great audience.
I'm a good audience.
Of course, when Sesame Street came on, they said, oh, that'll be the end of you. There was a question whether the show would go on.
We were having a wrap party.
But then as time went on, I think we were getting the sense that Ernie was getting concerned.
How could he possibly continue what he wants to?
You made me what I am today. You know that.
Hi, Mr. Dressup.
One of the reasons I became an actor was because at a very early age, this person on television, an adult but not an adult, taught me that it's okay to let my free flag fly.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the great Canadians, Mr. Dressup.
Wow, man, I gotta I gotta watch myself because I'm gonna shed a tear on that because it's amazing how that just transforms you right back to where you were on my grandmother's couch or at my parents' old place. It's just it's very overwhelming. It's a wonderful experience. Like I'm just so overwhelmed that this movie came out because I watch it every single time, and I'm an 8-year-old kid again, and that kid is long gone, and like this process is just it's so connecting is the word I want to use. So all right, let's jump into it. Let's bring on our guest, Rob McCallum. He's our primary guest tonight for storytelling, directing, writing, editing, all the whole bag. Let's bring Rob up. And there he is.
What's this? What's this magic box you've put me in? You've transported me here. How did you do this? The modern
It's not
technology.
the tickle trunk.
No,
It's
that's
magic
over
you didn't
there.
believe, Rob.
Tickle trunk is over there. That's where I found these lovely garments. Do what I can. How you doing?
And you got some other props as well with you.
I do have lots of stuff. I mean, this is a very Mr. Dressup thing. This is a taco that I've turned into a pirate hat.
Ooh.
Right? So I was Captain Taco Pirate for Halloween. That's what we do. And back behind me, I have a Finnegan doll as well. You know, because you got to
Can you
have your
grab that real
favorite
quick?
friend. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, let's have a look at Finnegan as well, because like you got this on eBay, you said.
I was able to get this on eBay. So this is an authentic Finnegan plush. It even has the collar there. They were sold for, I think, 1 or 2 live tours that Mr. Dressup did. They're fairly pricey from what I understand. And I was looking for one for a long time because it's research, right, when you're making a doc about Mr. Dressup to acquire these items. And I was able to find Finnegan. So, yeah, pretty good.
It's an amazing find. He's very quiet, by the way.
You know, he doesn't really speak up too much, but he tells me some wonderful things that I care not to share because that might break his confidence and his trust. But he's a good friend, like all good pups.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show today because I watched your Mr. Dressup documentary back in the fall when it came out on Amazon, and I heard about it at TIFF this year as well, but I wasn't able to see it. But when my girlfriend and I watched it on TV, it literally, like, I don't know if you saw the intro there where it just cloudy eyes me every single time because it's a magical transportation where it takes 51-year-old Chuck back to being an 8-year-old on a couch having craft dinner and tomato soup and grilled cheese with ketchup, of course, watching Mr. Dressup. And I grew up in the United States. My dad was in the armed forces. We were posted at the embassy in Washington, D.C. So I grew up with Mr. Rogers. And whenever I got to come back to Canada to visit my grandparents and my mom's side, we got the magical treat of seeing Mr. Dressup. And the minute we saw Mr. Dressup, we were hooked. And, you know, intrinsically, everyone I've talked to on my Facebook and social media, circles, when it comes back to them, when I've asked them, what's the connection between you and Mr. Dressup, they all come back with the same answer. It's my childhood. And no matter how old we get, we're always connected to that little child inside of us who had that one magical moment of being transported by Mr. Dressup. And I want to thank you for making the film.
Oh, well, thanks so much. I'm glad so many people have been able to resonate with the story we told and, you know, kind of had a little departure from their modern day and contemporary reality. Sometimes I think we need to take a step back and just, you know, chill out a bit and be reminded of where we came from and the things that made us happy and smile. And that was certainly one of the goals with the film. So I'm glad that it came across when you had a chance to take it in.
So what was your connection to Mr. Dressup? Obviously, you're a good Canadian boy and you grew up watching Mr. Dressup, but what was the call to action to you that you just said, hey, I've got a million ideas here. I'm going to exercise this one about Mr. Dressup?
Well, I mean, it was never on any magic list that I have. I really don't have that much of a list of projects I want to take on. There are ideas that I'll talk about more frequently, but this project kind of came out of nowhere. It was born out of trying to show my kids something that I thought would be wholesome, something that I grew up with. You always kind of try to do that, right? If you have kids, you try to expose them to the things that you thought were cool, and 9 out of 10 times it does not resonate. And it's just like, well, thanks for that, Dad. We'll never let you pick whatever's going on TV next. But in this case, when I showed them Mr. Dressup, they just, ate it up and they wanted more. And both of my kids, who were 5 and 2 at the time, they just loved everything about it, the gentle pace, the explorative, like the explorative kind of nature of it, the creativity. It was instantly a safe space for them. Not that they would know how to use those words, but you could tell they felt comfort just by watching it. It's that instant comfort and pleasure to know that you don't have to worry about anything. So many shows nowadays are about panic and stakes, and if we don't do this, what's going to happen? And I think that's the reality for so many kids too. So to show them that the world doesn't have to be that, even if it's just the world through a TV program, it was just like, oh, this is nice. And then of course, the documentary hat came on. It's like, oh, well, how come there hasn't been a documentary on this? There was a Fred Rogers one, and Canada's always like 3 or 4 years behind the US and kind of, following the same. I just thought it's crazy that there isn't a Mr. Dressup documentary yet. And I started looking into it and I thought, hey, there's got to be something that we can do. And I just started making the calls and ended up with a documentary on it 5 years later.
Well done with that. I mean, you couldn't have picked a more timeless episode or even show to actually show, because I remember when I was 26 or so, there's a series I used to watch as a kid. I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning to watch a show called Dr. Snuggles. And it was only a year or two. A very obscure British guy did it. And I was able to find them online back then, order all those tapes all over again, sent them over to me from the UK on VHS. And I was so excited to get these tapes. And when I put them in the VCR at the time, the magic was gone. I mean, I remember being as a kid, it was a totally different experience watching that versus watching as a 26-year-old afterwards. And I was very, very disappointed. But, even watching, the Dr. Snuggles videos again, trying to force feed myself into that, it was just exactly that. It was a force feed. Whereas Mr. Dressup was just a transition into like where I got cloudy-eyed every single time watching this, and just the feeling that I'm left with as a human being connecting to that, which was just magical.
The thing that I find going back to watching Dressup in particular, and maybe it's because I'm a parent, but I'm looking at it through adult eyes now, right? Like, think growing up, we see it as, we're Casey or we're Finnegan or some of the other puppet characters or some of Mr. Dressup's friends that come over that are younger than him, and we can project ourselves onto them as avatars. But now I'm almost looking at it through Mr. Dressup and how he interacts with Casey and Finnegan, the kind of children of the world. And so it's a whole renewed sense of appreciation and like tools, really, like, and how to handle different situations and how to like engage and how to just dial things back a little bit. Because, as much as I've made this film and I've surrounded myself with the ethos and philosophy of Mr. Dressup, I'm caught up in the world that we live in too all the time, worrying about what's coming next rather than, where we've been and what we should be focusing on now. So it's really nice to just hit pause for once and really try to do my best to keep kindness in the foreground, tackle things as a community, and look at the available resources around us rather than worrying about how we're going to get the thing we need to get the thing done.
Yeah, well said, man. And before we even go on to more Mr. Dressup, which I can't wait to get into the details, I just want to kind of go back a little bit as well, because you also had created the movie Missing Mom, which is available on Amazon as well, that me and my girlfriend watched, yesterday. And that movie really blew me away. Like, I mean, it really blew me away. And I'm not going to give away the ending, obviously, but I'm going to highly recommend anyone to watch this movie, because it was icing and cake. I mean, like, you really delivered on the front end, the middle, the storytelling, keeping us engaged. It's a wonderful movie that, I can't wait for people to go out there and watch, because there's so much value on every level there. And I just thought, we'd start a little bit with that, because obviously I don't think if there wasn't a Missing Mom, like we said, there's no Mr. Dressup. But let's talk a little bit about Missing Mom and your first memory of making this movie and your process in doing it.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It's a film that I made 6-7 years ago now. And like you said, it's on Amazon Prime. It's also on Tubi. It's also on YouTube. So if you don't have access to those platforms, don't want to download another app, chances are you probably have YouTube. Everybody seems to have it. So you can check it out there, just for sake of ease, if that's a bit more your style. But it gets born out of what happened with Nintendo Quest, the film before, in which I dared my best friend Jay to get all the original Nintendo games in 30 days without any online purchases. And the thing people kept saying about Jay's dream to have an entire run of NES library is it was impossible. There's this impossible thing that he'll never be able to do. But it was a journey that he wanted to go on, and it was a journey that I wanted to film. And after that came out and people really enjoyed it and were excited about it and the process and everything, I had like one question. What would be my impossible journey to undertake? And at the time, I was playing a video game called Child of Light, in which a girl is transported to a fantasy world. It comes out of Ubisoft Montreal, so a nice Canadian connection there. And she's trying to get to her dad, and she can't find him anywhere. So between trying to ask the impossible question of what would be the thing that people say is impossible in my world and this video game I'm playing, I'm like, oh, the impossible thing is, what if I went and tried to track down my mom, who, was missing from my life since I was like 8 or 9 years old. Nobody had known where she went, what she had done with her life, or where she had gone. And nobody was asking questions either. And it was just kind of one of those accepted things. I wouldn't say it was a taboo subject. It just never came up. And it was just like, oh, okay. But it was always this, what if? And so I decided, hey, I'm going to cobble some coins together, make a film out of this process of trying to track down, this integral person to my life. I'm going to do it with my brother, because what better sidekick, although he'll tell you that I'm the sidekick, what better way to tackle it than, a buddy travel movie? And maybe regardless of the outcome, we will get some answers and we'll learn a little bit more about her. But anybody that ends up watching it might have the courage to take those steps themselves. And that's kind of the genesis to the whole thing.
Yeah. More importantly, you had a line in that movie that I just loved, that it's all about the journey, not the destination, because we have this one thing that's intrinsic to us, that we all have destination disease. If I get this one thing, I will be happy. If I get to this one place in my life, I'll have peace of mind. And we get addicted to that destination versus realizing, truly, in my experience, that my drive to get to a goal, generally speaking, is 3 steps away from where the journey is supposed to be taking me, unbeknownst to me as a traveler. And my brain seems to think that I'm just carrot in front of the horse trying to get to the next step. And when I get there, then I'll stop and have a break. But it's who I get introduced to, or it's who I meet, or it's an experience I'm going to have, which is going to exponentially move me along my journey to take me to where I'm supposed to be going, unbeknownst to me as a traveler. And I thought maybe when you say that in the movie, this was a perfect example of that.
It is very much, all my films really look at the journey. Really a lot. There's a lot of road themes in my work. There's a lot of timeline based things and process and evolution and characters we meet along the way, like you're discussing. And is that the destination, or is that just, another mile marker on our journey to where we're going, whether we know where we're going or not? And there's never a sense of satisfaction when we get to that end place. There just isn't. Right? It's like you can never go home again, because the idea of going home is an illusion, because you have changed. Home has changed. So you'll never get that magic back, but we're endlessly pursuing it for that sense of comfort that we think is there or hope is there. But that comfort actually gets transported to the journey that you go on. And I love the process. That's my favorite thing. Figuring it out every step of the way. That's the treasure hunt. I love a good treasure hunt. The obstacles, the riddles, the unknown along the way. There's nothing greater than that.
Well said. I love to have the idea where I'm an actor on a stage. And when it comes down to me learning my lines as an actor on a stage, and then the director comes in the morning, before you start shooting, and says, okay, guys, you know what? We were up all night last night rewriting this one scene. We don't like it. And so now here are your new lines. And me as the actor just like, well, no, I've learned these lines. And he's just like, yeah, but you're an actor. We wrote the scene, and now in show business, you got to pivot. And it seems amazing. And I've been on movie sets and, extra work and, films and whatnot. And it's amazing to me how the crew pivots on any one given thing. And nobody ever asks why. Nobody resists. He's like, okay, scene change, boom. Everyone just gets into character and just moves. And yet in life, we seem to get stuck in this way, where life hands us something like, during COVID, for example, like it was the hardest thing for everybody to pivot. You take away people's coping mechanisms of gyms or food or family or connection or church, and then watch us just go batshit crazy. So when you say process and you say moving forward, that's just not for a movie. It's not just for, sport or education. That's for life. And I mean, like the fact that you've actually got to that point as a storyteller really comes out in your work.
These aren't just movies, right? These are reflections of everything that I go through with my life that everybody gets to see. They're watching Mr. Dressup, but what they're seeing is, a big part of me and my passion and my love that's on display from this point of my life and what's going on behind the scenes, getting galvanized into these memories that you have. And it's just like you and I are at recess. Did you see Mr. Dressup? Well, what do you love about that show? And I tell you what I love by showing you this 90-minute collection of people and thoughts and ideas that you may not know. Everything that you see that I make is just a reflection of what's going on. You want to talk about the pivot? Well, documentary filmmaking, especially on the fly stuff that you saw with like Missing Mom, or if people have seen Nintendo Quest, that's all happening in the moment. We don't get a chance to say, okay, we're going to pivot. Let's pivot. It's like, it's all unfolding and we're all playing catch up. And the cameras are always a step behind the action, which makes it, alluring to watch because you're racing to kind of get the best perspective. But that's life. And I like showing people that life can be fun. It can be inspirational. It can be something to be excited for. I don't want to make films that talk down to people, that crap on subject matter. I want to make stuff that is going to have you on the edge of your couch or your chair at the end, and you're either going to jump up and scream with excitement, or you're going to cry because of, the thing that happened. It's going to go one way or another way, and it's always going to be that big emotional switch. Otherwise, why am I taking the time to share this thing that I care about so much? Not this big thing that everybody necessarily knows, but the thing that I care about so much that I want you to know about. And that all comes from the journey, and that it's just what's going on in my world. You get to see basically a slice of my head when you see something that I get to work on.
The fact that you bring that up, I want to go to my next segment of your process. It's just, I think we as consumers, we're watching films, and I think I'll speak for myself, but when I go to watch a film, I usually have an interest in it, but I also want to escape my life. I want to be transported for 2 hours or an hour and a half to a different world, just to either escape what I'm dealing with or to connect to something different. But we never see the journey behind the scenes of the pitfalls, the obstacles, the highs and the lows that a writer, producer, editor like yourself does going through this. The best thing I can explain is our friend Gabe Polsky. He did a movie called Red Army. We had him on the podcast. He's done many different movies ever since then. But I always love talking to him about his challenges, his obstacles. And he had a great moment where he thanked Philip Seymour Hoffman on the screen of Red Army. And it was every single hockey player in the world was on that screen. And then when I saw him outside of the restaurant we were at, I actually asked him about that. And he just said, well, I'll never forget. And this is just before Philip Seymour Hoffman passed away. And he just said, he told me every single day when I'd hit a wall, nobody wanted to buy my film. It was Red Army, so the Russians didn't want to do it. The Americans hated the Russians getting these like hockey, so they didn't have any skin in the game. So you can see where I'm at trying to, and I'm funding this. And all these things are coming at me left, right, and center. And Philip Seymour Hoffman was the one guy who kept saying to me, hey, it's the process. It's not any better or worse for you. Everybody goes through this in the storytelling business. And so I thought we'd just speak a little bit to your experience about what you gained, your takeaways for where you grew, what capacity you filled that you were able to go on to the next level to be a better storyteller and then be able to get better engagement.
It's like you said, there wouldn't be a Mr. Dressup film if it wasn't for Missing Mom and everything that came before it. It's all the culmination, and sometimes you take big leaps forward and sometimes you take small leaps forward, and sometimes the camera's better, sometimes you've got more time to edit. There weren't a lot of obstacles with the Mr. Dressup film, which is really, really wild because this is a story that people have been trying to do for 20 years and they've been constantly turned down. I've come to learn. People have approached the Ernie Coombs estate and they've pushed people away for, whatever reasons. People approached CBC and they said no for whatever reason. And I don't know, the doors opened for me at the right time. Part of it was my track record. I think part of it is just who I am. Part of it is my love and the way I'm just a happy guy, especially when it comes to being a creative storyteller. Nothing was monumentally different on Mr. Dressup than anything else, except for the subject matter was easy to pull people in Canada because it's like, yeah, I get it. There wasn't a sale. There wasn't I didn't have to sell anyone on it. People got it right out of the gate. So that was, an hour less of conversations with every single person I had to talk to, which was nice. The pandemic stopped a lot of our research and development stage because we couldn't go out and talk to more people and figure out what the story was. Was there a different angle? Were there, skeletons in the closet we didn't know about? It actually gave us pause. And in the most Mr. Dressup way possible, it was like, hey, just breathe for a minute. And as soon as we did that, because we literally could not do anything more, that's when the doors all started to open. Marble Media got involved. Hawkeye Pictures got involved. We started pitching, and eventually those pitches went to Amazon, and Amazon got involved and immediately recognized what a valuable Canadian story this was. And then it was off to the races. I got to work with a bigger crew and more resources than I ever had before, but my approach to filmmaking didn't change at all. And if I didn't do all those films and play all those roles that I do on stuff like Missing Mom, where I'm writer, director, editor, camera person at some point, producer, distributor, marketer, all crowdfunder, all of those things, it wouldn't, all that gets translated over. So while we have, a really competent DP, I can speak the same language, but still let them craft an amazing looking shot. But I'm not kind of hung out to dry trying to figure it out. So it was all just the next step. And sometimes films or the creative things that we're doing are next step rather than into the unknown, taking a side step into the darkness, trying to figure it out. And this was just a next step, which was great because we had the resources to go to the next step rather than kind of drown or tread water for a change, which is usually the case with, filmmaking on the documentary side.
Yeah, there's a wonderful clip I remember watching. Christopher Nolan, obviously, director, talking about Interstellar.
I've heard of that guy. I've heard of him. He's done.
Yeah, he's done a few films.
Not bad. Not bad.
But somebody had the question for him, like, how do you do Interstellar? Like, how do you get the people as an aspiring filmmaker, going to film school? Like, how do I get something like Interstellar? He's like, you don't. You got to put in your time like everybody else. You can't cheat the process. You got to make your first film, and then when you make your first film, then you got to make your second film. And then they start giving you bigger budgets. The better you do, the more it's just like getting promotions at work. But in film school, if you don't have that drive to realize that you're doing the first one for the second one for the third one, you're not going to get an Interstellar. And certainly it's not going to just fall into your lap because no one's going to give you hundreds of millions of dollars in a budget if they haven't seen your work and connect to it.
Yeah, track record is very important, and you've got to be your biggest advocate. And you've got to be a self-starter. No one's going to hand it to you, right? Like I remember in college, we had this one friend who was like, oh, I never meet any girls. I'm going to be alone forever. And we're like, dude, you sit on your couch all the time and just hang out. Like the girls aren't in your living room. They're out there if that's what you want. You got to go out and talk to people. He's just waiting for divine intervention for the ceiling to open up and all of a sudden his problems be solved. And filmmaking is no different. The documentary side is a little bit different than, the Chris Nolan narrative side where hey, you do Memento, you make some money. Okay. You can do Batman Begins, you make some more money. Okay. You can do the next one and, do Insomnia or whatever the string of stuff that he's done. And you can build that and you can see how it goes from one project to another. On the documentary side, it's okay, you might have one big one like a Mr. Dressup, which I consider a pretty big film, but then you might have to do something small again. And it's more like looking at the whole kind of thing that you've done. Is Rob capable of doing this next project that he wants to do? Okay, he does have a track record of doing this and this. Yeah, that might make sense. But it's not like a bigger film. It's not like I can do Interstellar now because I've done Missing Mom. And Mr. Dressup doesn't change that dynamic at all. I think the only thing I would add to that conversation is you've got to be willing to ask to do Interstellar, the right people at the right time, and know that people are going to say no and figure out how you're going to do it anyways, or your version of it.
Yeah. I want to try and get into a little bit more about Mr. Dressup right now, and obviously the storytelling. People who watch that movie, there's a lot of questions that I have. Like first question I had is, Ernie Coombs' son has this one amazing spot where he's talking to an Air Canada attendant, and he's just like, I need to get back. It's COVID, or no, sorry, the not COVID, 9/11, the other big world stopping. Yeah. And he's in England and he can't get back to Canada. His dad just had a stroke. And the woman said, I'm sorry, it's 9/11. There's nobody moving. And he says, like, listen, did you ever watch Mr. Dressup? And she's like, yeah, of course. And he's like, he's my dad and he's just had a stroke. I need to get back home. Can you help me? And you see him tear up in that scene because the woman came back on the scene, on the phone and said, sir, I was able to move some things and we got you back. And he says at the very end of that scene, if that woman's watching right now, I just want to thank you for making that happen, because that made a huge difference of closure in my life. And I really connected to that as well. And, after I'm watching that movie, the first thing I'm thinking to myself is, man, did that happen? Like, these are 1,000 questions that go on after the documentary that goes that you really want to know the answer. So are there any of those things that happened after the film that were questions for you?
Yeah. One thing that's super exciting is there's a moment where there's a caller on air talking to Ernie Coombs with Pamela Wallen after the live tour section in the film. And she's like, oh, Mr. Dressup, I just wanted you to know, how much you meant so much. And we heard her brother reach out to us. And then she reached out to us saying that she's so blown away that her call was featured in the film and how much it meant to her all over again, that she got to like relive that moment, relive Mr. Dressup. And now she's still forever cemented in that legacy, for this, one-off kind of like radio call-in thing. She's like, wow, I can't believe you guys chose to use that. And so that was exciting, and it's just kind of like a lot of people are just reaching out like yourself. A lot of people just want to talk about it and they don't know what they want to talk about, but they just know that they need to continue talking about everything that Mr. Dressup is and just kind of sit in it for a moment. After all the live screenings we've done, like with theaters, like with people just come up to us after, and like people come up and just look me in the eyes and just shake my hand or want to give me a hug. And there are no words other than thank you, because they're feeling it all, stuff that they haven't felt or thought about in decades. And it's a pretty great compliment just to have like a happy silence, right? You don't have to fill it with jargon and praise. It's just a comfortable contentment.
I like that, a comfortable contentment. I had a friend of mine that, and I mean, CBC, being, your Canadian staple, I had 3 channels growing up in Winnipeg that we had. CBC was our 4th channel that was French that we never used. But a friend of mine, David Faulkner, was on Mr. Dressup like 2 or 3 different times. And he was actually a character, wore a little Tam O'Shanter hat. He might have been 13 at the time or 12 or whatever like that. He went to Claude Watson School for the Arts and he just applied and they liked him. And so when I found out he was on Mr. Dressup, he was like a celebrity to me. And the first things he would tell me about is like how kind Ernie was, how he was just not Mr. Dressup and Ernie Coombs. He was the same guy. Ernie Coombs was Mr. Dressup. Mr. Dressup was Ernie Coombs. And then even your film, like Ernie's son said the exact same thing. It wasn't like he came home, took off his hat and became dad. He was the same person, playing that role, kind of like Ted Rogers in that sense, where you kind of wonder, is this a shtick? Is this a character? Is this a meme this person's playing into for the audience? But he just embodied that way of being.
Yeah, Ernie just seems to be the genuine article. I mean, the line between who he was and who Mr. Dressup is seems to be a pretty thin veil. Much like Fred Rogers, Fred, it feels like there's a bit more of an artifice when I look at his program with who he is, because it's so structured and he's really trying to get a message across and everything feels so calculated and instinctually like formatted that I feel like I'm watching a TV show and something that has been deliberately created. Whereas Mr. Dressup felt more like a easygoing, here we go. every step along the way. I could go over here. Oh, what about this? Like everything is kind of a surprise, but there's no pressure. And Ernie, I think, there's another clip where he says, after 20 years of being Mr. Dressup, I became him, he became me. And I think I'm a better person for it. Right. So it's not like he wasn't a good actor, because all the performance stuff that he pulled off, making it so casual, was evident of his ability. It's just that that's who he was, and that's who the character became as a result.
What about your TIFF experience? Because I'm very interested in this. Obviously, being in Toronto for last 30 years of my life, I had a friend of mine, Karen Bruce, that was on TIFF for 20 years. We were pretty fortunate about getting tickets to wherever we wanted to go and watch the galas beginning and ending. So TIFF has been 20 years of my life, and it's just a wonderful, event, really well sponsored and thrown. But to have, Mr. Dressup be at TIFF, you being from London, Ontario, good Canadian boy coming out, like, what was your TIFF experience? Like, I'm dying to know this.
Well, I always said I'd never go to TIFF unless I had a film making its world premiere there that was sponsored by Amazon and all that. Those were my conditions for going to the Toronto film thing.
Sure.
Yeah. No, man, like, I'll be honest, like, it was always a filmmaker's goal to get into Sundance, to get into Toronto, to get into Cannes. And it's kind of those things that sometimes you're like, as you're making it, you realize those things don't matter that much, because you're just trying to make something that's really impactful and that you're proud of, and that you see, it impacting the audience. So we're very blessed that Dressup got into it. It wouldn't change the film, right? That's what I say about awards. Like, the awards are great and they're super happy, and like, it's great for everyone's resume, and it's helpful, but it doesn't change the film. The film would still be the film whether it got into a festival or won an award or all these things. But it's certainly an amazing experience that is hard to replicate. I've been in a lot of festivals, and there is nothing like TIFF. The buzz, the chaos, the excitement, like they talk about, there's no overnight successes or anything. Like, overnight, people were returning and messaging me in ways that had never happened in my career. And that happened again when we won the People's Choice Award. This film wasn't going to be in any festivals at all. Like, we hoped that we could apply and get into Hot Docs, which is the world's biggest and best documentary film festival, but we were still editing the film. It wasn't done, so we had to say goodbye to that, and maybe goodbye to any film festivals, because, well, this is the one that it's best suited for. And TIFF isn't really known as a documentary first film festival, let alone a Canadian documentary kind of stage or platform. But yeah, do your work and you have to apply just in case. And the people that programmed saw the merit in the film. And, I say we got lucky, but obviously the film is resonating with more than just one group of programmers and people out there. So, it's pretty fantastic. The opening night was amazing. The crowds of people, the reaction, everything, the legacy casting crew in attendance, to have the people that made the documentary with us there as well. And every subsequent screening that we got to go to has just been pretty awesome. Like, kind of Christmas morning type awesome, like once in a lifetime awesome. If you're lucky, you get to have one big splash like that, I think. And, if this is, I said this during production because, again, I love the process. Said it'll never get better than this. What documentary am I going to work on next where Michael J. Fox just says yes without any pushback, or Bare Naked Ladies, or Eric McCormick, or Kids in the Hall folks? Like, it's like, yeah, sure. Okay. It's like, when is that ever going to happen again? So I just kept saying, I'm happy to retire after this, because it'll never get easier. It'll never get better. And I can't imagine the experience being as impactful in that same kind of way. There'll be great stories ahead and great things to talk about and showcase, and people will get excited, but it'll never be Mr. Dressup, kind of magic again.
Yeah, I love the there's one clip I saw the other day where there's a catcher in the Major League Baseball. He was catching for the Orioles, and he comes out, shakes hands with the umpire. First game, first debut, walking in, looking around at Camden Yards, doing the 360 literally around, putting his mask on, smiling like, that's your first moment, your first shot of like adrenaline just gets pumped through every coursing part of your veins. I've been pretty lucky I do mostly NHL podcasts. So being on game day skate when rookies are there, first games, first goals, pucks, all those moments, parents are in the crowd, they're coming down first game to see their kid coming up for junior or getting the call up and seeing that elation on their faces. But there's just, like you said, there's no replacement for that. What you know is just like, I'm taking this in. I'm trying hard not to shit all over myself because I'm so excited. And just keep
every Stanley
inside.
Cup victory is different, right? Like there'll be nothing like your first, but winning the second feels like, you know, you'd never taste the Stanley Cup again. And here you are, but it's with a whole new group of teams, you know, unless you're the Penguins in 91, 92 or the Red Wings in the late 90s.
Fan. You're killing me.
Yeah. Sorry. You know, it's just hard to replicate and repeat. And when you do, again, you can't go home again. It's a whole new experience. And that's all. We're going to get into the hockey metaphors because I'm a huge hockey fan as well. So here we go.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so let's talk about hot dogs, because obviously you got a show coming up in December as well. And what do we plan for that?
Yeah, December 17th at 2 p.m. at the Hot Dog Cinema in Toronto. This is going to be a pretty big screening. There's going to be a lot of legacy cast and crew there. I don't know if the list is official yet, but there's going to be 4 or 5 different people, plus myself in attendance. We'll do an introduction. We'll watch the film, and then you can ask us any questions that you want after. At least I say any questions. Everybody else might have some vetoes to the questions that get asked, but everybody's pretty easygoing. So I hope that you can come out and be a part of that. It's the last big screening of the year. There are other screenings that we're working on throughout Canada, not just in the Ontario region, because of course Mr. Dressup went anywhere and everywhere. So we're trying to bring the film in person, and there's nothing like seeing this with a group of people. You need to see this film and the power of this film together. We screened it at the Highland Cinema here in London, Ontario a couple of weeks ago, and I've seen this a good 7 or 8 times now with an audience, and it still is just like goosebump moments. People in the crowd had seen it once or twice, and it was still a different experience for them, even though they watched it at home on Prime Video. It's just a phenomenal thing to experience. It's why we see bands in concert, right? We don't just listen to the album at home. You want to feel that energy that can only come from being with other like-minded people that, love the thing that you love.
Yeah, and I've been to a couple hot dogs as well on Bloor Street. Last one was for Willie O'Ree, the first black man that played in the NHL, and just the energy, like you said, in the room of like the people that were there, media, behind the scenes, family and friends, the gala afterwards, the experience that you have being part of the process, because it's very rare for us as consumers to actually be part of anything like that. And Hot Dogs does a great job of really giving you access to that, like you said, coming into the theater and sitting with everybody else. And I really think on an energetic level, there has to be something that resonates, that what I bring to the table energizes the person next to me, and that person watching that film through their projection eyes experiences something different and magical in their own thing that just accumulates in that one room, that makes it a completely different customer service experience than just watching it again.
There's nothing better than when a whole theater laughs at something, right? Because you feel like, oh, we get each other. Or when you all gasp, or you hear other people kind of tearing up around you. It's that shared communal experience that we're losing so much of, because we can do so much with our technology on our own, separated from one another. But my goodness, if COVID should have taught us anything, it's the power of being in each other's presence. And that's what Mr. Dressup was about too. Getting together, being creative, having something to look forward to, right? Mr. Dressup, we had to look forward to it every day. It was on every day, but we had to wait for it to come on, not just boom, here's 13 episodes, Mr. Dressup to consume as quick as you can. Christmas is kind of the only thing that universally we all have to look forward to, that we can't speed up, that we can't have 3 days of early sales and 3 days later of like sales after, like we've been experienced with Black Friday and Cyber Monday, where it's like a November sales event now. Christmas is kind of the only thing that universally as a society, the holiday times in general, that we all have to wait for. and it still works, and it's still exciting. We all wait for it, and when it happens, it's great. And then we unwind and we look forward to the next thing. But it's kind of like it. There's nothing else, because everything else has been sped up or dropped in our lap the second we get hungry for it. And we need more of that. We need the wait. That's why Saturday morning cartoons were so great. We had to wait till Saturday.
Yeah.
And if you missed it, if you missed Saturday morning through the recess Monday, oh my goodness, you were left out of the field. You're sitting there going, I don't know what happened. And man, I really missed out. Why did I have to go to my cousin's wedding? Why did I have to go to that hockey tournament? I missed what Garfield was up to and what the Ghostbusters did, you know?
There was only one thing that could actually get me up on time as a kid before alarm clocks. You know, I'm an 8-year-old kid, but for whatever reason, I could physically get up at 5:30 in the morning to start watching, you know, Warner Brothers and like, and like the Roadrunner was my first, you know, and then I had a routine of every single cartoon. When I went upstairs to get my cereal to come back downstairs, my parents knew that till 10:30 they could sleep and do whatever they wanted to do, because like my brother and I were going to be watching cartoons and just be entertained about that. But again, I had hockey in the afternoon, and you know, that was my start of my routine. And I really feel I was jacked because of that. And like you said, looking forward to the next thing was your next cartoon or your next project or whatever that was. And certainly as an adult, I followed that pattern. My next question is, after hot dogs here, like what's your next process? What's your next thing? What are you looking forward to? You can take some time off. Are you going to get back into the ring again? And, you know, I'm curious.
Well, it never ends. It's just, you know, in extended states of development. 3 weeks ago now, I had a new series drop on Super Channel called Planet Cool Stuff that looks at everything in the world of pop culture, from video games to toys to movies, TV, cartoons, music, you name it. It's the people, the lifestyle, everything you can imagine in the world of pop culture. Even we talk about the history of McDonald's and how it's changed to become this iconic thing that is part of pop culture conversations, Batmania, like everything you can think of, you know, bundled into 4 segments across 13 episodes. And that's airing every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Super Channel. I've got Nintendo 64 Quest, our spiritual successor to Nintendo Quest, that came out in 2015, now dropping next year in November. There's going to be a 13 episode series about hunting down every single Nintendo 64 game, no online purchases, in support of Alzheimer's Society as well, and research, because both Jay and myself have been impacted by that ailment. And, you know, we want to see a change for that. And then, of course, some major films that I'm working on as well. And hopefully some doors open up because of Mr. Dressup, and we can, you know, tell some more interesting stories and some great pop culture Canadian stories. You know, I'm really excited that people are saying it's finally time that we're getting some of these stories from Canada's pop culture shared with the world. Mr. Dressup gets mentioned in that breath. 299 Queen Street West by Sean Menard gets mentioned in that breath as well. So Canadians are not good about celebrating their heritage and their icons unless they're an athlete. You know, outside of athletes, especially hockey players or winter athletes, Canada doesn't do a good job, not good enough at sharing their successes. So we're going to try to
even
do
if they do, they
better,
apologize. They say, "I'm sorry."
Oh, I'm sorry. Have you heard the story about this person who did this incredible thing? I apologize for mentioning it a second time, but I wanted to let you know that it's a pretty big deal, if that's okay.
There's a great saying about that. You know, Canada's going to take over the world, and then you'll all be sorry.
Yeah. I have a hockey story for you about Mr. Dressup that didn't make it into the film. I think you'll appreciate it. So there was this big, I think CBC was a sponsor on it, and there was a big kind of autograph session. It was up in Northern Ontario somewhere. They had hockey players. Wayne Gretzky was there, and Mr. Dressup was there. And people would line up for hours and stuff like that. And can you guess who had the longest line?
No.
It was Mr. Dressup. Hours and hours people waited for Mr. Dressup while Wayne Gretzky, you know, was ready and available for autographs at the time. This would have been about the mid 80s, so Gretzky was definitely a household name by then, but people wanted to meet Mr. Dressup. Yeah. People still wanted to meet Dressup even after the 84, 85 years. Because everybody knew,
and
right?
I think
like
it's amazing.
Mom and dad and all that. And, you know, that's not take anything away from Wayne, you know, but,
Wayne's fine. Wayne's fine.
Yeah,
Rob.
he's had a few things written about him over the years.
He's going to be okay. Yeah, he's going to be just fine, just where he is. No, I think Wayne himself. Like, I was just having a conversation with another NHL friend of mine the other day. We were talking about Wayne Gretzky and these commercials now, and you know, he just is such an ambassador, such a quiet person, great dad, role model, and that, you know, they got him cast Connor McDavid, just chirping him on the bench, which just makes it so funny because it would never come from Wayne, that when he comes from these chirps, you know, it just makes it, you know, good storytelling because it's really engaging. Because everyone knows Wayne Gretzky would never say stuff like that, you know, let alone be captured on film with that as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our friend Tina, who this all started having you on the show. I put a Mr. Dressup post on my Facebook, and Facebook's algorithms change a lot over the years, and I get a lot less engagement. But that one post, Rob, when I put up Mr. Dressup, everybody found that post. And out of all the people that were on that post, there was a person I wasn't even friends with on Facebook. And it was our friend Tina, and she just said, "I'm glad you enjoyed it." And introduced me to, and I reached out to her. I was like, "Sorry, I don't know who you are. You know, how did Mr. Dressup have an impact on you?" And she's like, "Well, I know Jordan and Rob." And so I reached out to her, and then she actually, you know, put me in contact. And I thought we'd just bring a little bit more about Jordan as well, because he couldn't join us on the show as well, but just to kind of give you some time to talk about your creative partnership with him and give him his accolades.
Yeah, Jordan's the best. He's a writer producer on Mr. Dressup with me, as well as kind of everything at some stage or another. Everybody needs an Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Jordan is my Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's my sounding wall when I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about this idea?" And if we talk, the more we talk about it, the less viable it becomes, because we see more pitfalls. But with Mr. Dressup, it was like, "Yeah, okay, green light, let's do this." And green light is the term that we have. Then when we truly get excited about something that could go forward, it happens. But he's very calculating, very smart, very precise, can come at something from a number of different angles. And he just has a positive energy that I think is sorely missing with a lot of people. He's never, you know, kind of dissuaded by obstacles. He loves to overcome anything big or small. He's the kind of guy that'll put, you know, if he's got 3 hours to put into something, he'll put 15 into it, because he just wants it to be that great. You know, it's not about the money. It's not about the fame. It's not about the credit. It's just about doing a great job and being proud of what you're doing. And, you know, I'm a better person because of Jordan. His friendship has meant a lot to me over the years. And it's really cool to have him. He appears on screen in the Mr. Dressup documentary as an expert and historian, but, you know, he's right along with me in Missing Mom. He's integral to Nintendo Quest and kind of everything I've done in one way or another. He's the best.
I mean, that's really truly remarkable that you actually edify and acknowledge him that way as well, because we have very few people in our lives that are our Jordans, you know, that we have the ability to connect with and align with. I'm just curious about, during your process, if you have anybody else that you want to thank or acknowledge, or who have been your Jordans for you along the journey, that you could just take a couple of minutes right now, just say, I wouldn't be where I am right now without these people.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one Jordan for sure. But, you know, my grandparents who raised me, I was lucky to have them both. Mm-hmm. They're very much my own Mr. Dressups in different capacities. My grandma, you know, who passed during production, she passed away in the middle of production, and she was always the kind of person that would keep magic alive, though, and make a bigger deal out of something. Just so there was always a sense of wonder and mystery and awe, when it would be so easy to not have that there. She always wanted to, you know, dress something up a little bit more. My grandfather, who was recently, unfortunately, diagnosed with dementia, he was very much the practical side of Mr. Dressup, you know, able to build anything, able to do anything, very patient, willing to work with you, willing to show you. So I was very blessed in that regard, and I wouldn't be where I am today. And, you know, my grandfather had an HVAC company. So he's a very blue collar, works with his hands, hardworking guy, hardest working guy I've ever known. But that's not me. I'm not great with tools by any means. You give me a screwdriver, I'm going to end up with, you know, the need of 3 Band-Aids somehow. So the fact that I wanted to go into the arts, and they stuck with it and they saw it through and helped support where they could, kind of meant the world to me, you know. And of course, at home now with my kids and my partner, being a filmmaker is not easy. The demands it has on you goes above and beyond 9 to 5, the amount of travel, the unorthodox scheduling, and the support system you need to have a family work and function is very hard to explain. But both my kids and my partner rise to the challenge, sometimes gritting their teeth and biting their tongue, but we try to do that for each other where we can as well. So I wouldn't be where I am without them.
I just want to add a little bit to that because part of me, I remember watching when I was watching Missing Mom, and I saw your grandfather talking, and I was just like, wow, like you said, HVAC guy comes from a different generation than you and I, and generally speaking, most guys from that generation didn't have the empathy or the compassion, and he started off at the very beginning of the movie being a little jaded, but at the end of the movie, like, wow, like it was like the Grinch, where his heart was 3 sizes bigger that day. And I don't want to give away the ending of the movie, but I was really impressed with the personal growth that he showed.
Yeah, I mean, every good story should be about transformation, right? You mentioned the Grinch, Christmas Carol. Everybody's going to be watching their favorite version of that soon, where one person starts out one way, is completely different by the end, whether it's bad to good or good to bad, or innocent to experience. That's storytelling 101. And I really try to make sure that happens in all my films. So yes, good observation.
Well, before we go, I wanted to give you the chance just to throw out a call to action to our audience to go out and watch your Hot Docs on December the 17th, downtown Toronto. We'll put all the links in, obviously, the post. But where can people find you on social media? Where can they go? Do you have any crowdfunding, any fundraising that you're doing for future projects that people can connect to? Any of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty accessible on all social media. Twitter and Instagram is kind of where I interact with the most. So you can find me on Twitter at Rob McZob, ROBMCZOB, and that's the same address on Twitter and Instagram. Right now we have a Kickstarter going for Planet Cool Stuff, that series that I mentioned that delves into all corners and all realms of pop culture. If you want a DVD copy or a Blu-ray copy, or you want me to draw you a really bad sketch of your favorite pop culture character. Again, I am not an artist, but if you want a really truly unique original bad sketch, I got you covered, and I'll do that just for you. Otherwise, just you can reach out to me anytime. I'll be happy to give you a recommendation. My bios and all those social platforms have links to a lot of my other films, so you can check out anything that you want. So if you love pop culture, whether it's Mr. Dressup or cartoons, chances are you'll find something that I've done in that vein.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't want to give you another plug for Missing Mom as well, because it was just such an impactful movie. Pardon me. Such an impactful movie that, I saw nowhere coming. There it is on the screen as well. But I mean, I really encourage everybody to go watch this movie, because it just got so much humanity through it across the board. And like you said, the growth period, the transformation side that's in this movie, the storytelling, the heartstrings, all of that's involved with this movie. And to me, it was actually a real benefit. Obviously I wanted to have you on the show to talk about Mr. Dressup, but Missing Mom just checked every box for me as well. So I'm really happy that you made that movie. And I'm really happy that you took some time out of your schedule to talk to us about Mr. Dressup and your process behind the scenes. And we'll look forward to having you on the show after Hot Docs and see how this goes for you down the road, and keep in touch with you and see what your next projects bring.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And, if you're looking for a guest, if you do any St. Louis Blues podcasts or commentaries, I would love to participate in that, because I think I'm Canada's only blues fan, unless you're, a relative of a current player, maybe, Robbie Thomas or something like that in the area. But we're underrepresented in Canada, so I'd love to talk blues and NHL anytime, but I appreciate you talking.
I'm going to throw you a bone on this one, because Ryan O'Reilly happens to be just up the road from you. He grew up in Clinton, Ontario. He's no longer a Blue.
Yeah, he's a Nashville Predator. We can't talk about him now that he's in Smashville. Doesn't count. He turned his back on us. Yeah, he's done. Heaven forbid.
He's a Toronto Maple Leaf. That's the conversation.
That was the bigger sin. That was the bigger sin he committed.
Yeah.
I just felt sorry for him when he went to Toronto. He chose to go to Nashville. Okay. He made that decision himself. He didn't have to. He could have come back with the Blues. Come on.
Yeah.
Just say it.
I was lucky enough to go down to St. Louis last year for a game, get to meet Ryan behind the scenes after the game. And he scores every single time I'm in the crowd. He scores a goal. I'm like, Ryan, listen, I'm not making up stats here. I'm just saying, we're in Philadelphia, you lose, but you score a goal. We're in St. Louis, we're playing the Capitals. You score a goal in overtime, and then the shootout to send it off that way. I'm just saying, I just need a small stipend to stay together with this. I don't know if it's a hair thing, but I know it works. And you know, and Braden Shen's another beauty as well. So he was a former Flyer as well. But I mean, I love the story of the St. Louis Blues in that Cup run, you know, with Gloria and yeah,
So good.
that whole story from dead last, middle of January. My Flyers are playing the Blues, and I'm thinking this is a gimme game as a Flyer fan, and they lose like 3-0 with Carter Hart in that. I was like, how do you lose to the Blues? They're literally 31 out of 31 teams, and then boom, they go bang, 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 and O'Reilly.
There's a story of transformation, right? There you go.
Yeah, it is.
Storytelling 101 again.
Yeah, and that's a good one as well, because I love those stories as well. But Rob McCallum, thanks a lot for coming on the show, man. We look forward to your new stuff coming up aboard, and I'm a big fan of your work. And we're going to put all the links into your bios and your Instagrams and your socials on the podcast. And please go see his hot docs coming out December the 17th downtown Toronto from Mr. Dressup. Thanks for coming on the show, Rob.
Cool. Cheers. Thank you.
That's Rob McCallum, you know, our new best friend and our new hero right now. And we need more heroes like this, don't we, Cam? You know, I think, you know, coming down the road, storytelling is such an amazing thing that we just need more people that are going to be able to convey what we want to have as a feeling watching these shows as well. So let's bring Cam Larocque up and see what his greatest takeaways from Mr. Dressup was, because he's too young to know what Mr. Dressup was in the flesh.
Yeah,
so he would have had to play a little.
That might be a little bit. Yeah, you're right. It was a little bit ahead of my time, but it was always in the air. I'm sure I caught a few episodes as a kid. I remember that in Mr. Rogers. But I just wanted to circle back, of course, to the beginning, just watching the trailer with you and seeing how nostalgic you got. I can only help but think about the millions out there that feel the same way as you. And so I'm just really glad and happy to see the impact that Rob's made. I also wanted that Gretzky story. I thought that was pretty funny, especially in the 80s when Gretzky's, you know, putting up 200 points a season.
200 points, yeah. And kind of a big deal.
It's either you can see him or you can meet Mr. Dressup, and no, we don't want Gretzky. Dressup's our guy. So I thought that was pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and
other
I think
than that,
Rob
really
did
great
an
show.
amazing job on that. Yeah, did an amazing job on that show. And I'm always happy to talk to people about their trade. But Rob just seems to be so grounded from his films, like from a cathartic sense, from a healing sense, from a storytelling sense, where he's just done a lot of work behind the scenes to bring you that feeling or that understanding or that experience that you had, and then put it on steroids and put it on the film for as well. So I'm very grateful that he did this Mr. Dressup documentary as well, and I'm looking forward to the hot docs that's coming up as well. So, but that's it for our show. Like just like Mr. Dressup, we got to end right there. But I want to thank you for jumping on the show. We want to thank OneCliq for sponsoring this podcast, along with our friends at Mixed Chicks. Obviously, the hair like this doesn't happen. It's a process, just like everything else is in life as well. And we want to thank you for joining us as well. And we look forward to seeing you next time.